Hey everyone, in this voice recording, this is part 2 of Roman military traditions. Okay, now in the previous part 1 that I named Roman military traditions part 1, I spoke in brief about the structure of the Roman armed forces, the military and the navy. In this video, I'm going to be voice recording. I'm going to be filling in the gaps in case I missed out on something important and speak on some other units that are not exactly military units, but engaged in violence in some form of combat or violence in some form. Okay? Talking about their structure as well. In the previous one, Roman military structure, I spoke on the navy and the military and the auxiliary units of the general Roman military. I spoke about Caesar's legion, and I spoke on the Praetorian Guard. Okay. Now, in this voice recording, I'm going to fill in some gaps on what I failed to mention in the previous voice recording on the Roman Navy. Okay? Now, the Roman Navy also has its own officers, obviously, both on Caesar's Navy and also on the general Roman Navy. Okay? This must be made clear. There's always going to be some kind of a admiral or some kind of a consul or fleet admiral or some officer will always be there. Okay, there's also a structure hierarchy on the Roman Navy. Okay, just like there is in the Roman Legion. Also for the auxiliary, there's going to be commanding officers and centurions, especially for the forces on the land. Okay, for sure. I'm not so sure if there's centurions in the Navy. That's something I'm not so sure about. But for that, I guess Caesar will clarify. But whatever. So, yes, that's just to fill in the blanks, okay? The stuff that I left out. Now, let's focus on some other units that are in some way or form. They're not really military units, but they're still, engaged in some form of violence and combat. Let's talk about the prefectures. Now, the prefectures also are a type of, yes, they're trained to fight, but not as well as the legions, of course, okay? And I made a previous voice recording on the Roman prefectures, what's their duties, etc., okay? So they have their own ranks and hierarchy, obviously. You'll also have a prefecture of rank, okay? There's always going to be this thing on an officer or a centurion or something, okay? Now, the prefectures have their own ranking system. It's something different, okay? You're not going to call a Roman prefecture a legion. A prefecture is a prefecture, okay? You'll have prefectures, in every Roman province, just to investigate if there's any fire or, if there's any muggings, theft, or rioting. First thing, prefectures will handle all of this with their own ranking system and their own hierarchy, okay? Roman prefectures also usually wear red. There's no such thing as Caesar's prefectures, by the way. A prefecture is just a prefecture, okay? They also usually wear red. So, yeah. Next is the executioners and the jailers unit, okay? Of the Roman dungeon system or whatever, the Roman imprisonment thing, okay? The executioners and the dungeon guards and the ones that execute Roman punishments. Okay. Now, this Roman execution unit and jailer unit, they're their own separate unit, by the way, and they're usually accompanying the general Roman military, in case there's a province where there's a lot of trouble and, uh, there needs to be some executions being carried out, like crucifixions, flagellations, or all these forms of Roman punishment. You have a separate unit for that too. You're not going to make a Roman legion do such punishments. This is a separate unit altogether. Okay. Now, usually these units, they carry out, all the imprisonment, the guarding of prisoners in the dungeons, the crucifixions, the flagellations, the whippings. All these Roman punishments are carried out by this unit. Okay. You could also, I guess, you could call them the punishment unit or something, but whatever. They have some kind of Roman executioners and the jailers, okay? And they have their own ranking system, obviously. They have their own commanding officer, I guess, or senior rank, or I don't know if they'll have a centurion, but they definitely do have a ranking system and their own hierarchy, okay? Now, what color uniforms do these executioner jailers wear? They won't be wearing feathers. They'll just wear something maybe of brown or earth-like uniform, that will be their uniform of color. You won't see them wearing red, blue, or purple. That's for sure. Okay. Yes, they are trained to fight, but their training is usually more focused on the punishment, how to carry out a crucifixion properly, how to chain people, how to whip people, with all types of instruments or torture devices or whatever you want to call it. So that's their job, okay, to learn all these things and just unleash all this sadism onto people or whatever. So whenever there is a Roman trial and someone has been sentenced, then the prisoners, will be handed over to this unit, this execution prison guard, or not prison, I mean, to be more specific, dungeon guard unit, okay? So they're skilled in all these things, all the Roman punishments like crucifixion, flagellation, using instruments like the flagellum, all these kind of things, okay? You have them on the sea also, but they're not present on Caesar's Navy because Caesar's Navy is free rowers, okay? Caesar's Imperial Blue Navy does not have galley slaves. They're voluntary free rowers, okay? So, yeah. Now, you have these execution punisher units on this general Roman naval fleet. They'll usually whip the galley slaves. They're also usually their color is usually wearing brown. They're also part of this unit, this punishment unit. So they're also trained in, chaining slaves, and, using the whip. And they're also trained to fight, but their main duty is just, watching over prisoners, carrying out punishments, whippings, putting people in chains, unlocking chains, locking chains, locking the dungeon, unlocking the dungeon, keeping records of prisoners, being skilled in all these things, records of prisoners in some kind of a scroll or whatever. Okay. So, yeah. That's all I have in this voice recording. So yeah, I'll leave some links in the description box below if you're interested. I'll see you people in upcoming voice recordings. Okay.